All right. Hi, guys. So I wanted to show you all how to use geometric constraints. So this is an activity that I put in Schoology so that you can use this for practice. So this is on what's called a drawing sheet in Inventor. And on the drawing sheet are different activities for you to use geometric constraints. So I believe I have grid lines on, and I want to take those grid lines off before I begin because it's going to make viewing this a lot easier. So what I need to do is I need to get out of this view and I need to get into sketch mode. So I can double click on sketch and it should open up and put me in sketch mode. And I'll know that I'm in sketch mode because you'll see this big green check that says finish sketch. So your constraints, both geometric and dimension, will be in the sketch tab in this ribbon. It has its own section called constraint. So geometric constraints will use geometric terms or terms that you would have in geometry. And so they work exactly the same way. What I do like about Inventor is if you hover your cursor over, for this case, a constraint, it will tell you what the constraint is and what it does. So for our first constraint, it says to make these lines perpendicular. So I need to find the perpendicular constraint, click it, make sure that it is highlighted, and then I need to tell what lines I need to make perpendicular. Now, once you use that constraint, you should actually see the icon for that constraint as you do it. So this is the icon for perpendicular. So we made these two lines perpendicular. The next part says to make these lines all parallel to one another. Parallel can be a little tricky because it's two lines. This is for equal, but the one next to perpendicular is parallel. So we're going to click the parallel constraint. We're going to select two lines that we want to make it parallel to. So I'm going to make this one, this third one parallel. And as you can see, there are three constraints here, or actually four, that's letting us know that we just used the parallel constraint. So this one, it actually tells us to do two things. Before this demonstration, I'm only going to do one. The first thing it does, it actually asks us to dimension number 3. So dimension circle 3 to 2 inches, and then make the other circles 1 and 2 tangent to circle 3. If I were to take circle 3, I can add a dimension to it. They want that to be 2 inches. It is now 2 inches. So I just went into dimension, highlighted the circle, pulled it out, and added the dimension. But it did ask us to make it tangent. So I'm going to click my tangent constraint. I'm going to hit circle 1 and make it tangent to circle 3. I'm going to hit circle 2 and make it also tangent to circle 3. If I didn't want it to have it look all kind of weird, I'm going to take the dimension off. And I'm just going to constrain tangent circle 1 to circle 3, and then tangent circle 2 to circle 3. And just because I like things to look neat, I'm going to tangent circle 1 and circle 2. And there you see the constraint for tangent. So you can make circles and arcs tangent to other circles and arcs. You can also make circles and arcs tangent to lines, but you need to tell it what lines to become tangent to. So I'm going to hit the circle and one line, and I'm going to hit the circle again and hit the bottom line. And now you can see with the icon for tangent, I've made this circle tangent to these two lines. The next thing it asks us to do is to make endpoints of A and B coincident with point C. So coincident is not going to use lines or arcs, but it will use points. So I'm going to click coincident. I'm going to find a point. And I'm going to make it coincident to point C. And then I'm going to click point C's point and make it coincident to point D. So now we have all lines are connected through a coincident constraint. The next constraint is concentric. And we want to make all these circles concentric. So we can start with the smaller one and go larger, or start with the larger one and go small. So I'm going to start with the larger one and go to the medium circle. And I'm going to take the medium circle and make it concentric with the smaller circle. So it looks like a bullseye. The next one is collinear. So I'm going to find the collinear constraint, and I'm going to make my lines collinear. There I have one solid line from two lines. So the next few are kind of maybe the ones that are the easiest to use, but you need to actually pay attention because sometimes you want to use another constraint instead of just your basic horizontal and vertical. So we want to make these lines horizontal, and each line I select becomes horizontal. This section asks me to make them vertical, and each line will be vertical. This last section asks me to make this an equilateral triangle, so I'm going to use the equal constraint, and I need to select two lines to make those lines equal. And now all lines are equal, and I have an equilateral triangle. The same for the circle. I'm going to click the larger circle and then the smaller circle, and now these two are both equal in size. This last one is quite different than using horizontal with a line because it wants you to make the center point of the circle on a horizontal plane. So we can't see the plane, but there is one there. So we're going to come up and we're going to find the horizontal constraint. And instead of hitting the circle, we're going to hit the center point of the circle. And now we put the center point of all circles on the same horizontal plane. And so this is how we finish this page. This is a really good activity for you to practice geometric constraints. The next thing I want to show you is how we can take a profile that was given to us and edit it. So the actual dimensions for this profile is in Schoology, but I'm going to walk you through. There is no one way to edit this. You're going to really use the method that is easiest for you and the one that makes the most sense for you. So I took the grid lines off, and I'm going to leave them off for this demo. So again, I want to take this and I want to go into edit it. So I can either right click and edit sketch. And again, you'll know because there's a check. Or I can double click on sketch and it should put us in finish sketch. So I want to start with some of the things that are a bit easier. So I want to make this line vertical. I'm going to click my vertical constraint, and I just made that line vertical. So this is not a closed profile, and what I mean is that these two lines don't connect, so it is still considered an open profile. So I want to close these, not by extending the lines, but by connecting the points. So that's your coincident constraint, and you click the points, and now we've joined those lines together by one point. The next thing, we want to take this line and this line, and we want to put them on the same plane. So we're going to actually use collinear. So now these are on the same line, same plane. Now we're going to come to this slot in the middle. We want to make sure that our center point of the arcs are on the same plane. So we're going to use horizontal, and we're going to click each center point. Now the center points of each arc is horizontal, but it did kind of distort one of our lines. So I'm going to come in and use tangent and make this line tangent to this arc because that's the one that was a little wonky. And it's okay that the other arc is a bit larger because we're going to come back later and clean that up. So now we want to go and we want to put some dimensions in. For me, I find it easier to start with my larger dimensions and then come smaller. You may also, and I highly suggest that when you start dimensions, you make your dimension look just like the drawing or the picture that was given. It's going to be a lot easier for you to see if you are missing a dimension. So we're going to start with the length. So we're going to come to both lines and we want to pull it down. And this dimension is going to be 1.75. I'm going to come over to this line, which is one of our other larger ones. And this line should be 0.85 inches. So we have some two basic dimensions, and you can see that the shape of the profile is changing, but the things that we constrained, they all stayed the same. So now I want to look at some of my larger sections. So the next thing to dimension, it says it's 1.25 inches. And initially, I thought it was this line, but they actually want to make the center point to the line that is on the left. That is the largest dimension. So I click the center point and I click the line to the left. I want to pull it up. And this dimension should be 1.25. So notice that the slot shifted. The next dimension is this actual line at the top, this horizontal line at the top. So this dimension should be 1 inch. So now you can see things are starting to move. The basic shape is there. Certain things are not getting put out of place. They're all staying tied and connected together. So we have one center point of the arc dimension. We need to also dimension this center point. So we're going to come from this center point to this line. And we want to pull it down here. And this should be 0.25. Whoa. So this looks crazy, but we can come back and fix that later. So the next dimension is going to be this line here. And this dimension should be also 0.25. Now we have some other lines to dimension, and they're pretty straightforward. And I have this line to dimension. Oh, okay. This line should be 0.55. And this last line I may not need to dimension. This last line should be 0.20. So now we've shifted some things. We know that our total length is 1.75 and we didn't put a dimension on this line. That would over constrain it because the computer already knows if I add this dimension plus this dimension plus this dimension, because it's already constrained to our largest dimension, we don't have to put the dimension for this line. Let's come over here and put a dimension on this one. And so this should be 0.67. And it looks like we have almost all of our dimensions. The last one is the arc. We're going to click the arc and pull it out. And that dimension should be 0.13. So now it's looking almost like it should be. And we're going to clean this up with one final geometric constraint, and that's going to be equal. So we want this arc equal to the arc on this side. So now the arcs are equal, and we're going to finish up by making this line tangent to the arc. Tangent in the arc. And if I look at it, I have all of my dimensions. The shape is the shape on the picture. And so we can finish sketch. And this is how you use geometric constraints and dimensions.